What up, nerds? Welcome to another French language episode of Straight Chilling, the weekly horror movie review show where you chill and we kill, slice, dice, and chop up yet another horror movie. My name's Bob. I'll be your host for this evening. This is episode number 320, recorded on Sunday, May 23rd, 2021. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a new Netflix film, Alexandre Aja's latest. It's a movie called Oxygen. Before we get into it, let me introduce everyone else on the show tonight. First up, calling in from Washington, D.C., we got our boy, Randy Gandy G. Landy. What's up, man?
Hello, gentlemen.
What's going on, people? I'm happy to see us all free and outside of boxes and so on. That's good.
That's right. Can't keep a good man down. Despite all of our rages, still just rats in cages.
I was very confused where that was going.
That's the lyric.
Our various rages, you see.
Various. So many rages. I'm full of rages.
Quantifiable amounts.
Last but not least, calling in from my immediate left, we got our boy, Soju. What's up, man?
What up, it's your boy, Jejun Stains. Got to keep it consistent with the French films.
Absolutely.
You're just going to do that 100% of French films?
Yeah, might as well. There's only like 4 or 5 anyway, so, you know.
There's that we've talked about.
Yeah, French cinema is not a deep well at all.
Yeah,
barely exists.
I don't think there's a lot of French horror out there, so I think we've covered them pretty much.
Yeah, the French are really just known for their fries.
And their baguettes.
They're French baguettes. They're toast, I think.
This is where we let the world know that our only exposure with French people is through that one character in Monty Python's Holy Grail.
Yeah, precisely. All right, before we get into the main event, let's tackle some housekeeping real quick, gentlemen's. Here's another reminder, our June poll pick is currently posted on our Patreon website. If you support us at the $5 level or above, you get the chance to vote on a movie we're talking about this June. The theme for June is vehicular manslaughter, and the 3 movies to vote between are Christine, Joyride, and Rubber.
Bob, how are those numbers looking?
Looking tasty. Looking mighty fine. Christine is still in the lead, Rubber is in second place, and Joyride is in third. Make sure you get your votes in before the end of May. You got a week left to vote. We'll see what movie wins. We'll see what we're talking about this June. Christine, that'd be a fun one. They'd all be fun, to be honest.
Yeah, I think all of them sound pretty good. I mean, you know, some will say that Rubber has a different sensation than others. I mean, it's just a totally different sensation, they say. But
a numbing sensation.
Yeah, well, I mean, some think it pleasures her, some things doesn't. I mean, you can get all kinds of rubber. You know, you can get your rubber on however you need to get it done. But it's important. It's
ribbed
important.
Rubber.
Yeah. This is a joke with a very short shelf life, so let's just jump right on over that.
Along. Nothing to see here.
I'm really all about a nice, solid Joyride. If you know what I.
Dude, that might be the first horror movie that you and I watched together, Bob.
Probably.
Because I remember, we watched that at your parents' house when we were kids.
Had that shit on DVD. Love that movie.
Joyride building.
Big Steve Zahn fan, as I recall.
Oh, yeah. We're Zahns. Zahn heads.
We're big Zahn heads around here.
Zahners.
I used to have a GPS I called Candy Cane.
Candy cane.
Yeah. That's right.
Before we had smartphones.
Before they renamed her Siri permanently.
You had a Garmin.
Sure.
Do you kids recall Garmins? Do you know what the fuck that is? Candy cane. Anyway, get your votes in for the end of the month. In other Patreon news, we have not 1 but 2 brand new Patreon supporters.
Hot shit.
Bam, bam, bam. Holy shit.
Wow.
Big thanks to Kevin M. and Trenton B. for showing us some love via Patreon.
Thanks, guys.
Every dollar you guys contribute goes right back into the show. Means a lot to us personally, and helps us keep the lights on around these here parts. As is tradition, we owe y'all the straight chilling salute. This one goes out to Kevin and Trenton. Here you go.
Slap me in the ass.
And one more time.
Oh, God. Slap me in the ass.
That's a lot of ass slapping right there.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, gentlemangs.
Just line them pockets, boys. We appreciate it.
My booty's feeling tender.
Yeah, real red. Just pert, supple.
Well, those seem unrelated, but sure.
Lots. Right.
That's just a product of good genes, you know?
I guess so. Tight jeans. They really just strangle your ass. That's all the Patreon news. Juice, do you have any YouTube or Twitch or anything?
To our Patreon supporters, we finally recorded some bonus episodes for you guys that we'll be releasing soon. Talking about Mortal Kombat, finally, since that was a big hot topic issue. We decided to go ahead and give our personal thoughts on that one. And me and Bob do them together. We usually do them separate, but we decided to go ahead and talk about that together. And also Spiral, which is a new film that's out. We don't have a chance to cover it because the next couple weeks are booming for new movies. So we decided to make that a bonus episode. Yeah, so if you do support us on the $10 level on Patreon, those will be coming your way very, very soon.
Yep. Strap in. Got some bonus content coming your way.
Other than that, my house is clean.
Tight.
Bob, you need to talk about blues or something?
I got to talk about Joe Bob Briggs real quick. Big thanks to everybody that hung out this past Friday for Joe Bob, our live watch party. He showed Maniac Cop 1 and 2. Had Bruce Campbell and Bill Lustig on as his guests. It was a lot of fun. Squad was deep as always. If you're listening and are interested in hanging out for our Joe Bob watch parties, they happen every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We post a link to join in on the watch party / chat just before showtime. So we post that to all of our social media accounts. Just keep an eye out on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that shit if you want to join for this Friday. That's it. I believe our houses are collectively clean.
This house is clean.
Without further ado, let's get into the main event. We're talking about Oxygen. We're kicking it off with the back of the box.
What's on the back of the box?
Ain't no box for this. What you talking
I was about to say, Bob, you got
no
this box?
I ain't got this blue.
You can only watch it digitally on streaming?
That's true. And also,
That must break your heart.
I had such a meltdown when I was watching this movie because like Netflix just froze and like I lost internet connection and like I couldn't get Netflix to reset even though my internet was totally fine. And I was like just screaming physical media. Like, I was so upset, man.
What happens when there's a...
We actually have a clip of it right here.
What happens when there's a hurricane, Bob, and the power goes out? Physical media won't do any good
you
for you
can't
then.
Stream anything either.
I'm just saying,
It's not like-
nothing's foolproof, Bob.
Well, what
okay?
happens if
Nothing's
the fucking
foolproof.
zombie apocalypse happened, Bob? What good are
You know what you
blues
could
then?
do, though, Bob? You could have downloaded Netflix show to your laptop to use offline, and you could watch that when the power goes out.
You just put your fucking movie in to your laptop, or you can download it too with
What
your little
laptop do you
download
have
code,
that has
your
a
digital
DVD
download
player anymore, Bob?
Dude, this one right here that I'm using right now can play DVDs right now.
You forget that Rob's real committed to the anachronistic shit. He's probably got Super 8s hidden away somewhere if he needs them.
This is a MacBook Pro. It's not that.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay, Bob. Whatever. We get it. You like the olden days. You want to live in the
Whatever.
50s. All that shit.
whatever, man. Anyway, we're talking about the latest from Alexandre Aja, a movie called Oxygen. Yes, you can only stream it on Netflix. That's the only place. This was written by Christy LeBlanc. It stars Melanie Laurent and some other French names that I'm not going to try and pronounce.
Melanie Laurent.
General Mangs, you haven't seen this before because it's brand new. Would you recommend people check it out? Randy?
More the sci-fi crowd, maybe. I wouldn't really throw this too hard at the horror crowd. There's not a whole lot of the aesthetic of horror in this, but there is enough to where if you like sci-fi horror, you'll get something out of it. I think I wouldn't put it as a super firm recommend, but if somebody asked me about it, I'd say it's worth a watch. So there you go.
How firm is your recommend right now?
It's not as firm as it used to be.
Heard that. Juice, what about you?
Yeah, I would generally recommend this. I wouldn't sway anyone from not watching it. I think it's a pretty solid Netflix movie in general. It's got a sci-fi aspect. It does have some horror. It's not like hardcore horror, but I think it brings enough to the table to be thrown into that consideration. It's a pretty interesting premise. I think it's pulled off pretty well. So for Netflix, that's pretty solid. So yeah, I generally would recommend.
Tight.
Bob, how about you? Would you recommend people watch this?
I would recommend people watch this. It's
Oh God, yes, come with me.
come with me. It's really just
That's a soundbite right there. I like that soundbite.
it's kind of a one person
Ooh, some touching
show.
going on.
If you've ever seen that Ryan Reynolds movie Buried, where he's just in a coffin the whole time, it's basically like that, but updated, like a little more futuristic. It's definitely got the sci-fi aspect going. But if you're claustrophobic in any way, this is going to be like pretty damn terrifying for you, I would think. There's a bit of a mystery involved. You get to learn a lot about the main character as she discovers things about herself, which is pretty cool. And it takes some unexpected turns for sure. I was pleasantly surprised with that. So yeah, I would recommend this, actually. It's more sci-fi than horror for sure. But it's on Netflix. It's easy to find. The acting is solid, and it's a fun little ride. Check it out. Slam your eyeballs into it.
I would compare it to like a good episode, like a really strong episode of Black Mirror, but minus some of the humor that comes along with that a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So if that's your thing, this will be your thing too, probably.
True.
Wanted to add that. Sorry.
Yeah. Sounds like a decent little recommend from the Straight Chillin' crew. Without further ado, we're dropping that spoiler warning and we'll get into the rest of the movie. Here we go.
Spoiler warning.
Bob, did you write that plot synopsis?
I did write it.
Thank God.
I got it.
Please read it for me.
Is it in French?
Jejunstein.
Okay, good. Good.
Je m'appelle Liz.
Brassy ass.
Pamplemousse saucisson.
Je ne sais quoi, right? Am I right? I'm right.
Avec travail. Other words. No. So, yeah, we got our main character, Liz. She awakens in a cryogenic pod due to her oxygen levels running low. She has no recollection of who she is or where she is, but through conversations with the system's AI called Milo, she begins to put the pieces back together. She runs a DNA match on herself in order to find her name. She then searches her name on social media, and she finds out that she was married to a man called Leo. She then searches her name in the press and finds out that she was a brilliant scientist. She was working on some potentially unethical projects. She ends up calling the police, who are unable to track her and seemingly start feeding her false information, which confuses her. She calls Leo, and a woman answers the phone, who eventually tells her Leo's dead. And she also tells Liz that she is currently 42,000 miles away from Earth. The woman on the phone transfers control of the pod to Liz, which allows her to disable the UV protection on the pod, and she is able to see that she's one of several thousand pods on a spacecraft that's heading to a new planet. Everybody in these pods are clones. They are intended to colonize a new planet because Earth has been ravaged by a virus, and the human race is dying out.
It's science fiction, people. I mean, you really got to make some leaps of logic with this one.
This would never happen in real life. It's an impossibility.
Never.
Unthinkable.
It turns out the spacecraft was struck by a meteor, which is what caused Liz to wake up. The woman Liz was talking on the phone turns out to be the original Liz. The clone Liz is able to reroute oxygen from the other pods just in the nick of time before she runs out of oxygen in her own pod. She then returns to cryo sleep to hopefully awaken when the craft lands on the new planet and they can start a new civilization. There we go.
So,
yeah.
I want to say, it's hard to say this. I'm trying to be careful. There's a movie that came out around.
She sells seashells.
No. There's a movie that came out around 2008, 2009 that was advertised in a very similar kind of way. Different overall kind of premise, but it was based on like one person being in an isolated area, and pretty much the kind of twist of the clone aspect was the same. So I actually called that shit like super early.
Do you know what movie?
Yeah, me
What's
too,
the name of
actually.
the movie?
I can't.
Is it Moon with Sam Rockwell?
No.
Oh, should I?
I
should
didn't
I
want
not
to
have
say
said that?
because
Oh,
I
you
did.
did?
I'm
Okay,
telling
okay,
the
okay.
twist.
We can bleep
of
it.
the
We can
fuck-
bleep it.
That's fine. You don't have to say.
Yeah.
That's fine.
For us to like, Bob will bleep it. We'll just throw that work
I
on
won't.
Bob.
No.
I won't believe it.
I was trying to
Well.
be careful for that particular reason. I
Okay.
knew what the title was. I was trying to give a vague general idea of when the movie came out, but so unfortunately the idea of like the clone aspect didn't have, it was kind of played as like this moment, but I was like, yeah, that's kind of the deal with sci-fi.
I did not guess that. So I did, as soon as it started, I was like, okay, she's on a spacecraft for sure. I didn't guess that there was like thousands of them and they were clones or anything, but I knew
See,
she
yeah.
was like in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Interestingly, yeah, I had the opposite, where that was the part I did not guess. The thing that I was guessing throughout was the clone thing, and it was not for the same purpose that I anticipated, though. So this movie did keep me guessing, because I thought, based on her little flashbacks early in this movie, where she's getting little flashes of her memory, dealing with hospitals and things like that, I thought that what she was a clone for the purposes of harvesting organs for somebody who was dying.
That's fair, yeah. I liked the reveal of the space because they do a pretty good job of leading you away, because at first she has like a general idea, like this idea of cryopods is not some new information for her. So she's like, I'm in a hospital, so somebody's going to come and get me out of the hospital. So apparently they use this type in the world that they're living in this future. They use cryopods for people who have deadly diseases, and they keep them in hospitals. So she's like, okay, I don't remember why I'm sick. I kind of remember going into a cryo sleep. I think I'm in a hospital. They're going to come and get me. Then she talks with the police, and it becomes this thing like, who would want to hurt you? So then she does this swerve of, I'm buried somewhere, because then there's this whole, they feed her this information of what's the serial number of the pod, and they're like, this pod was destroyed 3 years ago. So then it's like a who done it, like who's treating you this way? Are you buried underground? Are you in these catacombs?
You have any enemies?
Yeah, so then you're like, what the fuck's going on? And then you finally get the reveal of, you're like in fucking space, and you're like, oh, I liked it. I liked that ride. It kept me interested for a movie that's stuck in one location. And then the final reveal of that, I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, the space reveal is like super horrific. You're speaking of like the horror scenes in this movie. I feel like it starts off very horrific, where it's almost like she's being born. As she's like trying to like burst through this like wrapping that's all over her body. I guess it's supposed to keep her isolated or something. She's like ripping it off, and like it's
She can't breathe. It's like a bag.
Yeah, she can't really breathe.
Yeah.
It's a long, drawn out sequence, and it seems like very uncomfortable, and like it's a hell of a struggle for her. And the way it's lit is with this like flashing red light. It's very horrific. And then you don't really get much horror until like the reveal that she's in a spaceship. Whenever
I disagree.
Okay.
There's a couple key scenes. So to build off of that, I agree, because she's also strapped down. So immediately they hit you with this claustrophobic thing. They build off that in two ways. One is they have these quick flashes, which I thought was pretty cool, of her imagination of her suffocating to death, where it's like her twisted face having run out of oxygen, and they flash it a couple times really quick, but you get just enough you were like, oh geez. And then they also play with this, now this is a little bit of bullshit, but the rats, they do a lot of stuff with
hallucinates.
rats.
Yeah, rats
All
are
of
not
the
in
rats.
there, but she like worked with rats, so she hallucinates that there are rats.
Yeah,
in
the
pod
lab
with
rat
her.
is an ongoing thing. Like the first image we see in this movie for the title screen is a rat in a maze.
Yeah.
Despite
And
all
then
of
later
its
on, we
rage.
see flashes of not just rats, but like sort of like mutated rats that are clearly in pain and dying, which was the first horrific thing that I think we do see. And then eventually we see that similar, or at least similar breakdown of human body in the form of Leo, who we're told, or we think at one point or another, he's her husband, and then another point he's not. That's kind of a journey in and of itself as she discovers what's going on. But yeah, I would say that there are little flashes of horror stuff, but like the big, like the gruesome horror-y things are very much relegated to the flashes up until that space reveal. To your credit, Bob, to your point.
Oh, another thing too. Actually, I'm going to disagree one more time.
Damn.
I know. There's also this little bit of aspect. I think it's better sprinkled in than kind of how you guys are selling. I don't feel like this big, because it was more of a jump scare because there's a dude with a fucking hole through his head, and you're like, oh fuck. Yeah. But like, as far as like horrific moments that make you uncomfortable, also in the pod, there's a couple times the robot like tries to stab her or is trying to administer something to her. So within this pod, she has to deal with what she thinks is like rats flooding her thing with hallucinations, which is also her running out of air. So you get that. You get the birth scene, which is like very claustrophobic. You can't move and stuff like that. And then you also get like the actual pod like kind of attacking you. Those are pretty horrific.
Yeah, it tries to euthanize her at a certain scene, which is fucked up. Yeah.
It's primarily I think it's like it mostly falls in the realm of existential horror up until like you get some like truly like not stock standard, but sort of like what you would expect from a horror movie is what I was that jump scare. And it's not to say that that's the scariest part of the movie, because the whole idea is in and of itself what's scary about the movie. So yeah, it is horrific in its conception, but in terms of how the scenes play out, the most horror-esque scene, I would say, or horror-esque moment, the most identifiably horror moment would probably be that one. Yeah. Most easy to like the easiest check off the bingo card, so to speak. Yeah. But yeah, like the central thing about this is sci-fi, so it really does hinge everything on the concept that it has. Which, you know, I never saw Buried, but the concept of that was, here, let's take a claustrophobia, let's take being buried alive and make a whole movie out of it. I haven't seen it, but you know, that in of itself is a horrific thing. This takes that to a more conceptual level, and it does that, but it does that while also having you like not know who you are, not only just not know how you got there, but not know who you are, not know where you are, and actually be able to contact the outside world and start piecing it together through like both like in a visual way, which makes it, I think, more of a movie. You know, set aside the fact that why they would have a fucking HUD display inside of a fucking cryogenic sleep chamber. Like the logic of that, I don't know. Like that's questionable to me. But you know, for the purposes of the movie, that makes a lot of sense, and it allows us to sort of like go down this journey where she's being lied to by police or not police or the military or whoever, and then contacting somebody, and then eventually, like Rob said, finding out that she is actually speaking to an older original of herself, and she is a clone on her way to colonize a new planet devoid of the virus that has been ravaging the planet Earth. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, the ethical nature, like the question of ethics and all that, like I was really like down the rabbit hole of, okay, she's there for the organs. Like this is going to be like, you know, she's the first guinea pig because she developed the system. That's why they said she's being unethical with her research, and her husband got sick from this thing and she did too. So this is her clone that she can use to fix herself. And like the ethical questions of that are vast. And there's like, that's well-trod territory in the scientific world, I think, or at least in the sci-fi world, where thinking about what is the ethics of creating life just to harvest it to support life that otherwise would have died out. Is there an ethical like quandary there? But then it goes into this whole different direction where it was like, I think less like ethically unsound, or like less ethically questionable. You guys maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like the idea of, okay, we need to propagate the human race. This is a way we can do that without sending fucking babies, infants, or like having to send human beings off, you know, that may or may not be infected in this situation to colonize this new planet. are we abandoning Earth? Maybe. I don't know. Like, what's going on
Yeah,
Earth is
'cause
still kind of in question at the end of this.
It is in question because it alludes to the idea that maybe everybody who is maybe it's almost like the ethical thing where we think of, oh, the Earth's destroying. Who do we pick? Well, we pick all the scientists. We pick the people who could repopulate a world, except that they're not those people. They're just clones. So I don't think they ever really do answer that question, or because it could go either way. It could be like, this is a very dangerous mission. It's very far away, and we're not going to send people to do it. We're going to send clones that we can create.
Well, also, it
maybe.
seems like, at least in Liz's case, like they wouldn't want to send old-ass present-day Liz. She probably wouldn't survive the trip.
Well, no, absolutely, yeah.
So I don't know if that's the case for all the clone. Like if they just cloned elderly people, or did they clone 20-year-olds? Because maybe
I
this
think they
20-year-old is
cloned-
diseased or whatever. They don't want to send them. They want to send.
Well,
I thought they cloned like people who
Just
could
scientists,
build
just-
not necessarily.
Well, yeah, they're
just
both like
scientists, but-
scientists.
engineers or whatever.
The only
Yeah.
people that we know are on this thing are two scientists, one of which worked on the project that they're on, at least one, and then her who, may or may not have, it's a little in question in itself, but she was like enough of a wonderkin to be like on fucking magazines and shit.
Yeah.
Scientific American or whoever, like not American, but you know what I mean? Like she's a rock star scientist in her own right. So leading off of that, the only information we have, we got to think that they're sending people that have the scientific prowess, the whatever is needed to terraform and create life, a sustainable life on this other world. The thing about this, that like I think that really the ethical quandary that really is I still get stuck on is kind of the same one, regardless of whether or not it's the what I thought it was or what it is, which is the question of, this is a person who not only is a direct clone, she's a direct clone with exact memory replication. Mm-hmm. So for all intents and purposes, and at least in her experience, she is this person.
She is,
but
Liz,
she's not. So what is the ethical question? The ethical question is whether or not it's right to push this person who is a free-thinking person with memories, not originally hers, but that they gave to her, in order to, like, what is the ethics of doing that and putting her in a dangerous situation, maybe against her will? You know what I mean? Like, does she have consent?
I think that is
the
the
ship
biggest
of Theseus thing, and it's tough to say.
ethical thing that you could ultimately get to is, they have these essentially people who haven't ever lived. So she's essentially born in this cryopod, but who have the memories and lives of other people and who are obviously capable of being people themselves, being sent on this mission to another planet where other humans don't exist. It's like forcing them to do this job. But I mean, that's what it kind of comes down to, I guess. That is the ethical.
They're definitely being put in a situation that they don't have any say about. Like they're just shipped off to go do this job and like help keep humanity alive, right? Which seems unethical, but also like if that's the only choice, like if that's the best shot humanity has, would it be unethical to not try to do that? Like, just let people die out, or do you got to take all the shots that you can?
Yeah, because essentially then if you're saying if the Earth is screwed, which we don't know 100%, I guess, but
yeah, we don't really know.
If
it sounds like it's operating like normal based on the phone calls.
If you're going like from an ethical standpoint of maybe the Earth is screwed and you're giving life to these people, then they wouldn't have a life on Earth anyways. So it really is just like we're giving you life on another planet. But we don't know. It doesn't really dive into those finer details. And that's some of this maybe movie's shortcomings. I will say I really liked the ride. And I was kind of happy with everything I was given. But once it sparked me to think about it, which is a good sign. But then when I did, I was like, oh, there's quite a bit of problems here, which can happen with sci-fi movies. But like just general timelines I had a problem with, and I felt they had to like stretch things out to just kind of make this movie work. But so for one instance, timeline wise, Pod Liz calls her mom, and her mom's talking to her, Like, hey, Liz, like, what are you doing? Like, I wish you would come and see me. I hope you're not driving and calling at the same time. Like, you shouldn't do that. That's dangerous. Then later, in order to show the difference between, like, you're not actually Liz, there's another Liz. Liz is, like, old as shit. Like, Liz is giving this speech where she's, like, super old. And I was like, that would make her mom over, like, 100 years old. And the woman who was on the phone did not fucking sound like she was 100 years old. So I was like, like, I don't know. I think there's, in order to make the story work, they stretch some things that if you really start to think about it, you're like, wait a fucking second.
I think that's still, like, I mean, it stretches it, but it doesn't break it necessarily. I think those could be, it could be simply that, like, I don't think the only image we see of her, of old Liz, original Liz, as an old person, she is old. She's kind of hunched over. She's got gray hair, but this is set 12 years. This clone has existed for 12 years, right? So we don't know when it was created, when Pod Liz was created, in relation to when the original Liz took that mouth swab that we see her take. We don't know if she started out at the age she is now in the pod, like as like, say, a 35, 40-year-old woman or whatever she is. Like, I don't know. So let's say she's 55. She could pass as that, I think.
Well, that's not the problem I have.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, if she's like, say 50 when she takes that mouth swab, and then they immediately create a clone of her at that age, and that's who is Pod Liz, and they immediately send her out into space, then Liz is now on Earth 62, which that's enough of an age difference to where you might have health problems, especially in a world that's ravaged by disease. So I'm just saying that it's not that it couldn't be true. You're right to say that it stretches it, that her mom would be alive, but a woman who's 62 might still have a living mom, because people live until their 80s pretty commonly.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess it could happen. Yeah.
Like, mathematically, it's not completely out of the question, is all I'm saying. And, like, it's tough to say because we don't know her age, and we don't know those variables. True. And that's kind of like the thing that part of the trade-off for experiencing this as Pod Liz does, which is the whole premise of the movie, and it's like inexcusable to not have that. But part of the trade-off of that is you don't get the, like, nitty-gritty aspects of everything like that. Like, that's the sci-fi, both the sci-fi suffers for the existential horror's sake in this. I think the question of, like, the horror of, like, oh my God, I'm trapped in this thing, is rightfully placed in the forefront, but that pushes, like, aside all these ethical quandaries and all of these, like, the intricacies that you could really dig your teeth into and talk about philosophically or, bioethically or whatever. They get kind of cut off because we just don't have the variables available to really know what the fuck is going on, to the point to know, like, I want to know more, is, I guess, the problem. I just want to know more about why they're doing this, how they're doing this, what's going on Earth, and, what are people saying? Obviously, there's some question about its ethical nature, because they brought that up directly in the movie. So, I mean, I want to know more about that, because that is really, like, beyond the moment to moment horror of Pod Liz's life that we get to see. The existential horror for me is, what happens when we start thinking about these things, when these are possibilities, they're capabilities we have, and, another virus hits or whatever else, the world starts blinking out from fucking whatever reason. If we start traveling down this road, which clearly is very much an open path right now, that's the thing that I want to know more about, and I want to know what this movie's take on that is, but it doesn't really get a chance to give that, because it is, and I think rightfully, but dang it, like, just not to my taste, it's focused on other things that are important to this singular story. So I don't know, it's kind of a roundabout way of saying that, but
I think we got to talk about another aspect of this movie, another major character of the artificial intelligence called Milo in this little joint here. Milo's kind of a son of a bitch, I gotta say. Like, which, it's just a robot, so it's programmed to do what it does, and it can't, like, it doesn't have free will, but it's presented in a way where it's just not really enabling Liz to find out a lot about herself. It's not really helping, and at a certain point, it's programmed to, like, euthanize her, because her probability of survival drops to a 0, and it's like, well, we got to mercy kill the bioform, so here we go. I'm gonna try
and that's a UN measure, they said, which is another political thing that I wanted to know more about.
Yeah,
like another sci-fi political thing.
I think the biggest problem I had with Milo, I didn't necessarily mind it in the story, but again, this becomes one of those things where you start to think about it. So if the idea is that Milo is essentially running not just the bioforms that are going to repopulate Earth, but this ship, assuming like it doesn't have a captain, there aren't people aboard, so it's running this ship. I feel like they toe this line of where like you can have an AI and it's going to run a ship. It's going to take care of all these people, but it's not smart enough to come up with the solution that she comes up with at the end of this film.
Yeah, right.
It's not smart enough to say all the other life forms in the busted pods are dead and here's oxygen. And in order to keep this one pod alive, I could just move the oxygen.
It can do a ton of shit. You just have to like ask the right questions to get it to do those
it's
things.
like an
that's every computer on Earth. That's how computers work, though.
Now, but like not in a future where you can make clones and you can make an AI that's going to drive a spaceship.
I mean, we already have AIs that do that, and we already have clones on this planet. They're just not human, as far as we know.
I mean,
and it's like
you'd really just chalk this up to piss poor programming, because like somebody programmed this thing to kill this woman before it would think to like reroute oxygen to her pod.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, like that's the error that you get. That's the human error ingrained in machines. Like you don't have machines that can the whole difference between man and machine is abstract thought like that. And I think it's kind of an assumption to think that, you know, even with all of our tech now, it's not like we laugh at, you know, Cronenberg's The Fly when the thing is able to like have these weird abstract statements come out of its little machine mouth. Yeah. And that's basically what you're asking this to do. I don't think like as far as I know, I don't know that there's a future that I can pinpoint. That's just knowing how computers work. It feeds out what you put into it. It can like handle a lot of information. So you can feed it a lot of information and it can spit out solutions that way. But if it doesn't necessarily have that information or doesn't necessarily know to look for that information, because it's not expecting a person to wake up. It's not expecting to be crashed into by asteroids. Like it's a contingency problem that comes from how they programmed it, I would think. Like they need to have planned for more contingencies than they did, including this one. And they didn't. And the machine isn't smart enough to do that because it's just you get out what you put in.
Some kind of like remote control or something. Like, oh shit, we can see that the thing got hit by an asteroid. Yeah. Let's fix this problem from the ground.
Maybe, yes.
Or something.
But they also they're able to phone call Earth. So yeah, that stands to reason. That's fair to say. But then at a certain point, it does go into hyperspace, and there is some statements about like you're going to be out of communication soon and things like that.
Sure.
So there is something to be said for what you're saying there. But it's also like it's not a perfect. It couldn't be done permanent, like on a permanent route.
That kind of bothered me because once I was able to accept that they were in space, and I might have accepted that before they even did the reveal of like you're in space, and I was like, oh shit, okay, they've moved past, you know, you're thinking about like a trip to Mars or something, you've moved past the point of communication, that's fine. Except they did two statements. We're going past the point of communication, one, and two, this spaceship has existed for 12 years, okay, these things, and like it's going to be a long mission. It's going to take so many light years or whatever. And then when they open the pod, like not door, they don't open the door, but like the window, you can see the window or whatever. They're fucking floating right outside of Earth. You can see the Earth. It's there, like fucking right there. So I was like, what the fuck? I don't know. That I mean,
it's right there the way it's right there the way like an asteroid might be right there, but you don't necessarily.
It took up like the whole like screen that you could see through the thing. It was like within moon distance.
Dude, the Earth is very big. It would take fucking a long distance between you and
years.
What?
They said 12
years. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the communications issue.
No, I was talking about, well, I mean, that kind of plays into it because, like, we know now, like, you know, the International Space Station, like, they communicate with Earth, like, and they're not, but, like, it doesn't take them 12 years to get where the fuck they are.
No, I mean, I guess not. I don't know. I guess.
I think they said if we sent a crew to Mars now, like they left today, I think it takes like about 9 months to get to Mars. And from Mars, like, yeah, you can kind of see Earth, but it's like fucking tiny. 12 years?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. They do say that the ship is like 42,000 miles away. I don't know, like, what that is relative to Mars or anything else.
I mean, like, I didn't pick up on that specific number.
They did say that.
That would be interesting to know. I guess I didn't really consider that, but yeah, it's, to me, it's kind of a turn. It's an artistic decision maybe on the movie's point to have the Earth, you know, visible for her.
How many, Bob?
42,000.
So Bob says they specifically mentioned they are 42,000 miles from the Earth. The moon?
I don't remember.
The moon is 238,000 miles. It does not
feel
take
like it was more
years
than
to
that.
get to the moon.
True.
I don't know if that's the right number actually being cited, but I can't remember what it is. So I guess,
yeah,
you know, whatever. We're just talking out of our asses, maybe. But
I ain't no scientist, dog. I don't know. I remember 42,000, but I could be wrong.
That's the thing is like, and that's what you get with this movie is like, it has sci-fi aspects, but because it's the story of a woman or a story of a person, like it edges more towards the artistic in a lot of ways, and not necessarily to its detriment in most cases, but that you could argue that, it, you know, if you're going to have that hardline sci-fi, like that's something that you can do. You can measure how far out it is from X to Y.
I think I think the sacrifices they made from the scientific aspects, like this is how far we are away, or like you can see the Earth. I think it did serve to make the plot complete or make the story work. And that was my thing. Yeah. When I was in the ride and when I was just taking it all in, it didn't bother me. It didn't bother. Like when I first saw the Earth, I was like, "Oh, it's beautiful," and like again, like you said, the artistic choice. But it was interesting enough that I wanted to think about the film once it was over. And once I started to, I was like, well, wait a second. So really, that's where kind of the flaws came in. So it was good enough to pique that interest. And it was only until after the fact that I started picking apart.
There's another like really horrific sequence that I totally forgot about actually when I was running down like the horror segments of this movie. It's at the very end, like after she totally rips like all these IVs out of her arms. She's got this like hose that's going into her stomach that she has to pull out to like free herself from the pod. And then like in order for her to be like to go back to cryo sleep and for like all the oxygen to be rerouted to her pod, she has to like hook all this shit up again so that the pod can like know that she's safe. So she has to like reinsert these needles into her body and into her stomach, and it's like gruesome and really painful. And that shit is fucked up, especially because she's like out of oxygen, like exhausted.
Yeah, that tube in her stomach was gnarly. Ugh.
She's just had like her whole world turned upside down, finding out she's a clone, like in the middle of space. That's some horrific shit right there. That's difficult to deal with.
Let's talk about really quickly. I want to point this out because Becky pointed this out to me. Was we were watching this together, and she told me that like the I think it was a G tube that she had in her stomach.
Okay,
that's something that I mean, I guess is realistic enough. You know what I mean? Like that is something you can like. She works with kids that have various issues, including G tubes, and in some cases, the G tube will come out, and parents have to put it back in, and that's a thing that has to happen sometimes. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility.
Yeah,
and it's not too sci-fi, Justin. I know that upsets you. I just want to point that out because there's some like I don't know.
I didn't mind the needles.
It was gnarly
out of her arms, but the big tube coming out of her gut, I was like, oh my Lord, she's got to put it back in.
That's a lot. I mean,
one more thing I want to touch on though, because we have been like really focusing on the sci-fi aspects and the questions of AI and distance and stuff. And one thing I want to talk about is the kind of the heart of the film, the ending. So let's like talk about the ending a little bit.
Yeah, let's talk about the ending.
So she finds out she's a clone, and she kind of she finds out she's a clone, but she has all of the same memories. So in her mind, she is in love with the original husband. What's his name?
Leo.
Isaac? Leo. Okay. And she finds out that he is also a clone that is on the ship. Okay. So now she has to accept that she's going to die. That her husband, as she sees it, is alive, and she would have spent a life again with him after she then remembers him dying on Earth, because he got like a disease or something, died on Earth from the virus or whatever's going on Earth. And so she has to accept that, and then she starts to like leave him a message, like, I'm dying, I love you, like, I'm sorry we couldn't be there, whatever. So that was effective to me. And then she saves herself, barely, like just in the nick of time, kind of like saves herself. And then we get the final scene where supposedly like the ship has landed and they're together on this alien planet or whatever. So that's kind of the ending. I thought it was effective though, like where she's leaving the death note essentially or whatever. I thought they led up to that well to where it felt kind of deserved. I didn't mind that they left it kind of on a happy ending. I could see where some people would be like, oh, they're just giving you the ending like you want. But I would have been fine with 3 different endings. All 3 would have been fine with me. If she had left the death note and not survived, I would have been okay with that. I would have thought that's like an effective movie. If they would have ended it where they said she was going to live, but it just ended where like the ship speeds off and we got none of the planet, I would have been fine with that. I was also fine with like the planet scene. All of them were fine to me. How did you guys feel about like the emotional aspect of the movie and the ending?
I have a question real quick. So like the very last shot where you see them on the planet and stuff, I read that as sort of like her forward thinking, or maybe her having a dream of them having landed. I didn't take that as reality necessarily.
I did, and this is something Alice told me you thought that, and here's why it could be. We don't know. Here's why I don't think it's a dream. I feel like if you were going to set it up to be a dream as a result of the cryosleep, because you're right, she does have to put this neuro thing back on, and the cocoon goes back over her, and she does like go back. She takes a sedative, she goes back to sleep. So it's possible that that's not real. However, I feel like if you're going to make that artistic choice, if it were me, I would anchor it in another instance. And there's never, like, we don't start the movie off in a cryosleep dream. So like you almost would need another reference to that, another visual aspect of that for
it's not set up is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not set up. So there's nothing to tie me to that idea. It's possible, but since they never referenced it at any other time or gave you another example of that happening, then I just took it as they got to the planet.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the case. It's a strange jump from her going to cryosleep to all of a sudden they're hugging on the planet. Like, we don't get anything in between.
I think that more than anything, it's the artistic direction of that scene that I do not like. That scene, that last shot to me is too tidy and too whimsical. Like for such a movie that is built on like very like hard issues, like difficult ethical questions and all these other things. Like I feel like that's not a cop out or anything, and it's not like it's the worst thing in the world, but it struck me as very like hokey feeling, and as a result for the movie that we got.
Maybe because it's a dream.
I mean, no, and I also agree with Justin on that though. Like I don't see any evidence of that being a dream. If it is, then I guess that's fine, but it still hits the same chord for me where it's like, okay, like I feel like this is a bleak story of, science like being so advanced, like by necessity or supposedly, and like advancing to the point where it can do all these amazing things, but it's clearly has faults because,
cold.
like you guys said,
it's not humanistic.
Yeah, you can't. It's being controlled by an AI. It's being which doesn't have the abstract thought to make these decisions to save these lives, and doesn't have an emotional drive to do so. So that's the story that I was invested in more than anything. The love story thing, it gives her a purpose, and it gives her she has to have a pathos in order for it to be horrifying. That this is a person who has pathos inserted into her as an empty husk, and then has to come to grips that is not actually hers, but she can, it's the only thing she owns in terms of a self. So that's the horror that I'm interested in. And for it to then be and then happily ever after seems a little bit, I don't know. It's pretty hokey and not really, I don't think, in keeping with the tone of the rest of the movie. I feel like a darker ending is what I expected, and what I really kind of feel like this movie was should have been aiming at. I understand, I don't hate it entirely, but I do think that it was a less strong than if they had just, like you said, if they had just shown it shipping off into the distance and left the question hanging, that would have been fine. That would have been that gives us the chance to discuss it and talk about what, could have been happening, all that stuff. But the fact that they showed that, they did not have to show that. And the fact that they did, really leaned a little bit too far over the line into an emotional storytelling from the perspective of the writer, as opposed to a sci-fi story about systems and the people that make them, the people that live in them, which is the thing I was most interested in. Yeah. So
I think the tonal shift and stylistic shift towards the end just helps prop up the idea that it's a dream sequence, because it feels out of place.
It feels out of place. I'll definitely agree to that. I just don't think that it was intentionally
because
out of place.
It does everything else.
Everything else was
pretty grounded.
Such intention. Why would that last scene just all of a sudden not be?
I mean, but to be fair, it gives a description of the planet there, because she even says she kind of starts getting desperate or whatever. But she's still describe to me the planet we're going to, what's the world we're supposed to inhabit, and it creates this it's this kind of planet, and it makes it seem surreal. It's not exactly like Earth, and they don't make it exactly like Earth. The sky's kind of purplish, or if I remember right, there's 2 suns or something, or 2 moons, so yeah. I mean,
I guess it's possible.
Yeah. It didn't bother me, but I could see why it would bother people.
If they were going for, this is a dream of, this is her slipping away into cryogenic sleep and we don't actually have an answer, I'm okay with that. But the movie didn't sell that angle to me.
Yeah,
it sold me the angle to me. It felt a lot more like it was giving up the ghost and saying, and it all worked out in the end. And that to me does not comport with the movie that we got the other 90 minutes.
I will say I was very surprised that the ending was positive, just knowing who the director was and having seen his previous work.
That's fair. Fair.
I was like, she's dead at the end of this, 100%. Did not expect her to live at all.
We didn't talk about this Alexandre Aja film. He did. We have reviewed High Tension.
Crawl.
He did. You Crawl, did a mini episode on Crawl.
Yeah.
He did the Hills Have Eyes remake that we walked out of the theater for.
The Piranha remake.
Yeah. So he's not a super positive guy. To say that though, even looking at High Tension and just the aesthetic and just how things look, this movie looked pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought it was directed well. There were a lot of holes in High Tension too, which again, I think served the ride, once Bob had seen High Tension twice, he was like, nope, I couldn't get over that. And so maybe that's just kind of his deal. He kind of maybe cuts corners in some places to serve kind of the overall first viewing ride. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, potentially. Did you guys, when you watched this on Netflix, did you watch it in the French language or the dubbed version?
I always watch in the OG language if possible.
Gotcha. Yeah, the way
I was going to, but sorry, go ahead.
I would say the way it just started rolling and dubbed for me to where I didn't realize that it was dubbed until I was maybe 5 minutes into it, and I was like, something is off. What's happening? And I was like, oh, this is not an English language movie. I didn't realize at first.
No.
But I finished it that way dubbed just because I was already into it. Did you change it, Randy?
No, well, I mean, like I said, I was watching with Becky, and Becky was also had other fish to fry, and so she wanted to be able to hear what was being said and understand it. So, the things you do for love, people, Jesus.
Women, am I right?
I don't know, but
making you
it's
watch
just
dubbed.
It's like it definitely loses something. I feel like there's very few dubs I've ever heard that felt like it was on par or equal to the emotional output of the actor as you see them on screen.
Exactly.
I would have preferred the other way, but as a concession to her, I did that, and it was, it was still fine. Like they did, it was a decent dub. It wasn't like they did a terrible job, but it's still a dub, and it didn't there is a little edge lost in the translation, I think.
Probably best case scenario though, since there's no other characters really.
Yeah, actually, I mean, considering the content of the film, it's a pretty easy movie to manage that with.
You're just a good guy,
as far as they
Randy.
come.
Yeah,
good call.
I was just
razzing you. Sorry, ladies. I was just razzing Randy.
Razzing Randy. I was listening to an interview with Alexandre Aja. He's talking about this movie, and apparently, just before the pandemic hit, he was working on a Junji Ito inspired film, Tome, like his graphic novel
really?
Tome. He was translating that into a movie, and then it got shut down because of the pandemic. And then the script for Oxygen was like floating around for a while, and it eventually came to him, and he's like, this is like a small enough production. Like if I just got like my French film crew, like my brothers and sisters that I work with all the time, like together real quick, it's a small ass cast. We can just like knock this out while the pandemic's happening. So they decided to do that. And get it done.
I like that.
Smart.
Thanks for bringing that up, because it is interesting. I like the aspects of it's almost like a historical thing, and I didn't take that movie as that way, but since you brought it up, it's almost like, when things hit humanity, you have to adjust in some ways, like even going to goddamn Chick-fil-A now, it looks like completely different. And so, like, what does film look like when you can't be around people? Well, maybe you get movies that are
isolated.
It's one person.
Yeah.
And
which honestly plays to my interests, because like I love a good character study.
Yeah, and it's more like low key, and that's cool, because I mean, you look at it's a terrible instance in which it came out, but you get to see kind of the art is still going to be made, like despite this, how are we going to make it now? How are we going to do this now? And that's happened throughout history, obviously, like even like the thinking about like the AIDS pandemic and like how it affected art then, and like the people that got taken from it and how things shifted. Like it's interesting to think about this as now like a historical piece in a way of like, this is a movie that got made during the pandemic,
product of its time,
in the same way that Spider-Man was.
Yeah.
Like that's, I mean, you think about world shifting events. The last one that I can think of that really, really impacted the movie industry in that way would have probably been 9/11, because the shit that they had to change and alter, and like the course had to be completely altered for so many films, and so many films just didn't get made because of that.
True.
I mean, it's interesting that we kind of hit that again for the second time in our fucking lives.
I remember, I mean, that's a good point. I remember how it affected music. People saying that like, we dropped this album, and it was like really hard, it was really heavy, like it had a lot of aggression, and that's just not what people wanted to listen to at that time. Like all of a sudden people wanted to come together, they wanted to be like empathetic, sympathetic, and that just like so it bombed a bunch of albums, or albums got scrapped and stuff. It's crazy how history can like affect art in that way, and that's a cool point, Bob.
I mean, you can't take the art away from the culture that it was birthed in. I mean, you have to like critically, from a critical perspective, you really should consider those things too. So I'm glad that we brought that up. That is interesting, and it makes sense. Like the only other movie I can think of that I know off the top of my head did that was that movie. The one that was filmed all on Zoom. What was that?
Host. Yeah.
Host. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, it's belongs in the same footnote as that movie, where it's like a movie that's built. Not that movie is more like set in and like lives in the world where this happened. And this movie kind of does that, but it's not really, because it's not the same pandemic. And it's not focused on that at all. It's really more of, it could have been any sort of disaster on Earth that causes to happen. I feel like they did that for The Resonance, maybe, but they didn't. They could have said that, climate change was doing it. Like they could have said a million things.
And they did touch on a lot of like the modern day anxieties and fears, because the isolation, being stuck in this small place, and even it's got like a sterile kind of environment to it. I mean, it definitely touches on the issues of the
losing
time.
a loved one to a virus that's ravaging the earth. It touches on a lot of shit. Let's go ahead and land this plane here. I think we've touched on just about everything regarding this movie. Out of 5, we're rating Oxygen. Juice, why don't you kick us off? How do you feel?
I liked this movie. I liked the ride. I really did. I found the mystery interesting. I found the one person like engaging, and to do that is a skill within itself. So I want to recognize and appreciate that, because for a movie that was about an hour and 45 minutes long with just one person essentially, and there's other voices, when you're just looking at one person's face, it held my interest the whole time. I never felt myself drifting. I really wanted to ride along with the mystery of this film. I thought the visuals looked good. I thought the acting was done well. It's just one person. But I liked how the story unfolded. It felt natural. It didn't feel like they were forcing details. One other problem I had once I started to think about it, and to be fair, they gave them a little bit of time because she passed out like at one point after she started talking to the police. But when she initially was like, "Hey, robot, look my name up," or whatever, and it's like, there's like 12,000 articles about you. And she goes through, she's looking at all these pictures. She sees her husband. Oh, here's all these things. Here's me at this event. Here's me doing this shit. When she goes back, like, I don't remember how long they say she's out, but I don't know, a little while. She comes back and every picture has been changed.
They scrubbed the whole internet.
Yeah, they scrubbed the whole internet. And I was like, no. That hacker 4chan would have not let that happen. Anyway, so
young
that
man
was
with a chip on his shoulder called 4chan.
That was one more moment where I was like, there's holes here, and it's really just to serve the story, which if I can understand that, I can give it a little leeway. I still recognize it as a whole though, but overall I liked this movie. I thought it looked nice. The mystery was good, the story was good. Going back, there were some plot holes. Also, I feel like this movie doesn't have a whole lot of rewatchability. Like I said, I was able to guess the clone thing like really early on. It didn't necessarily spoil anything for me, but I don't feel that there's any need for me to kind of watch this movie again. I don't feel like I would ever have an urge to watch it again. And I feel like it would lose a lot of its like momentum that it had going for. Like, I in no way want to go back and like look for like details, or I don't know. I just don't want to do that. So I think it does lose a little bit of like wind in its sails when it's like, I don't think there's rewatchability here for me personally. Overall, honestly, I think it's a little bit lower than I anticipated, even though I really did like the film and I thought it was well made. It was well crafted, but I think it's got its own problems, and the rewatchability is a bit of a problem for me. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5 from Juicy J.
Yeah. Bob, out of 5, Oxygen. What are you thinking?
I liked this movie quite a bit. I enjoyed the ride. I think it's extremely difficult to make a movie like this where you just have essentially one character in a box for an hour and 45 minutes and keep it entertaining, keep it interesting. I wasn't bored at all watching this movie, which is saying a lot in regards to the movie's success. Kind of like you're on this roller coaster ride where this character's just like uncovering exactly who she is, and I think that ride's very entertaining. Something we didn't really talk about was like the cinematography, like the way the camera moves around the pod helps keep the setting engaging. It's like designed very well. It's very pleasing to the eye, and there's a lot of movement within the pod. I think they use a lot of the camera work in a very intelligent way to keep you engaged in this story. Also, Melanie Laurent like fucking kills it, man. If they had a lesser actress helming this movie, like it just would completely fall apart. You lock in and engage with her story and like how everything unfolds. So, I mean, well casted for sure. The science fiction aspect, whenever you find out they're like on a spaceship and stuff, felt a little like, I don't know, broadcasted, like a little advertised, I think. But the clone aspect was fresh for me. Like I definitely didn't see that coming. That was a solid swerve, even though I kind of saw half of it coming. I don't know. I really enjoyed the ride. I think as far as like new releases goes like this year anyway, this is one of my favorite of the year for sure. So I'm going to give this a little bit higher than you, Juice. I'm going to land with a 3.5. Yeah. Randy, how you feel out of 5?
Pretty similarly. I would say that, I'm a big sucker for a character piece, and that's all this is, or it's not all this is, but that's all this is focused on being. My problems with this are, again, sort of just the things I've already talked about, which are a lot of the thing I'm most interested about in this movie is not the story that's being told. It's the story that's not being told, which is, how all this came to be, the systems that exist, what the thinking of doing this, like the logic behind it. And I understand why those things aren't there. Like they're trying to tell the human story, but something gets lost for me there because I'm just like, I'm interested in what's happening to her and it keeps me engaged. And I think like Melanie Laurent does a great job. And I was like fucking stoked to see her again. I don't think I've seen her since Inglourious Bastards. That's the only time I've seen her. And it was like, I was excited to see what she could do, and she was doing a great job. I think she did a great job pretty much entirely throughout, but it just wasn't quite enough for me because they introduced these topics that are really fucking interesting and they only really glossed them, like that's not what the movie's about. The movie's about her. And it's hard to argue that shouldn't be the case. Like that really, it should be about the characters on screen on an emotional level. The problem, I guess, for me is that I was not as interested in that as the things they weren't talking about. And I feel like if they had more to say about those things and they had worked those into her emotional character-centric story, then I would have loved this movie. To me, that's like the difference between like this and Ex Machina, where they're both like heavy sci-fi, and they both have strong characters, strong actors, strong cinematography, all these strong things. But the difference is that what's going on in this movie versus that movie is focused on both the people involved and the broader topics that they're introducing. This movie uses what the topics they introduce as a stepping stone for a story. And that's not wrong, but it's not what I wanted because of how interesting the topics were. So that's kind of my main central thing that I had a problem with this movie. But like speaking to the positives, it's great acting. It's really, really well done for being, a bottle episode. Basically, they only do the flashes for the most part, and with the occasional, like flash sideways or whatever. There's existential horror involved for sure. And like Rob was saying, I was not bored in this movie. I will say that at about, I want to say maybe the end of, almost to the middle of the movie, maybe just a little past Act 1, I was like, it feels like they've already told the complete story here. I don't know why this isn't wrapping up. And I checked the time and I was like, wow, there's a lot of movie left. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, really. And maybe I was just, I don't know. At that point, I feel like, okay, this is going to go a lot deeper. Maybe that was part of my expectation issue with what this movie was presenting versus what I wanted out of it. So I don't know. It's tough to really ding a lot about this movie that isn't just coming from what I'm interested in on a personal bias, but I'm not going to ignore that either. So for me, I think that it's mostly good. It's a little bit meandering maybe, and it's got a few inconsistencies with some of the logic. And there were certainly a few questions that Liz did not ask that I feel like would have been really helpful. Like, are there other people around me? Or are there other subjects? What and how many subjects are there? All those things, they came up much, much later. And all she would have had to ask, like, once she got admin privileges, like, where am I? That's, if she had been told space by fucking Milo right out of the gate, then there would have been no problem. Like, or not no problem, but there would have been like an entirely different set of issues. She could have solved that issue and everything else entirely differently. It would have been a different movie entirely. So there were a few things like that irked me a little bit. But overall, it was a fun journey. Like, it was it was horrific in its own way. It was visually well done. It was well acted. So all that said, I'm going to give it a 3.5 as well, I think. It's not like, and Rob's right. Like, this is top tier as far as the year has gone so far, I would say.
Yeah,
but
I would agree
it's
with
just
that.
not,
I was surprised
there's just not a
finding
ton
myself
from
give
this
it
year that to hang your hat on.
Yeah, I give it a 3. I did really like it. I also feel like too, in like 2 years, I'll almost completely forget it.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. Like I said, this feels like a really good episode of Black Mirror.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
like,
yeah.
but like you don't remember. I don't remember every episode of Black Mirror I've seen. Even some of the good ones I've forgotten. You know what I mean? Like, that's not. It doesn't feel like it's fully realized to me in some way, and I can't really pinpoint why that is or what that is that's missing.
Yeah.
With Randy's 3.5, that's going to put our aggregate at a 3.3, repeating, of course. Let's go ahead and jump into our Rotten Tomatoes segment and see what the critics and users think about Oxygen.
Certified fresh to death.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Rotten Tomatoes segment of our show, in which I'm going to give these two gents the chance to guess the aggregate scores, both critics and users, on RottenTomatoes.com for Oxygen. We're going to start with our critics review here. It has 78 reviews counted, 78, so keep that in mind. We'll start with Bob today. Bob, what do you think that the critics aggregate is for this film?
I feel like it's going to be pretty high, man. I'm going to go 78 reviews. I'm going to go 78%.
Whoa, there's a little resonance there. It's like poetry, it rhymed. Soju, how about you?
Yeah, I think it's going to be higher too. I think this is a critic kind of movie. Also, too, I don't know the score, but I also, when we were trying to decide, like, are we going to cover a new movie, I was like looking at like what are some of the best movies that came out, and there was a lot of positive buzz around Oxygen. So I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to say the Project 86, please.
Project 86. Well, it's going to serve you well. It's an 88%. Soju's going to take the critics' score.
All right, there we go. Project 86 never let me down.
Never,
Lies.
never, ever let you down. So the critics' consensus for this is Oxygen gets the white knuckle maximum out of its claustrophobic setting, with director Alexandre Aja and star Melanie Laurent making must-watch thriller for sci-fi fans. Okay, sure.
Old white knuckler, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. The old space white knuckler, you know?
White knuckle maximum.
Whoa. Oh, can I get a hell yeah?
You.
All right. Moving on, the audience score. There are 250 plus ratings from the audience for this film. We're going to start in reverse. Soju, you start us off for this one. What do you think the audience believes for this film?
You said 250?
250 plus, yeah.
Okay. This one's tough because it's a slow kind of movie. I definitely could see where this is not going to be everybody's bag. I feel like this is going to be lower than the critics, which was 88. That is pretty high. 75.
75. Bob, how about you?
I'm going to go a little bit higher. 75. I feel like it's going to be higher than that. I'm going to $1 juice and go with a 76, please.
76. Well, ring-a-ding-ding. We got a winner on our hands here. Bob, that $1 served you quite well.
Nice.
Damn. Hey,
Can I get a hell skeet?
Hey, Bob.
Yo.
Hell skeet. sweet.
Thanks, guy.
Well, congrats, guys. You guys will enjoy your
Growth.
your mutual jerk off later or whatever.
I almost got 2 back-to-back Hell Ye sweeps. Damn.
So sorry. It's not how the cookie crumbled. All right, let's go to a random negative review, as we always do, because occasionally they're funny. Oxygen feels
I feel
more
like that's the line every week.
Yep. And like for the past 5 weeks, that has not been the case. So I'm just fessing up to reality here. Oxygen feels more like a clunky stage play than an enigmatic futuristic psycho thriller, says somebody who's never seen a stage play.
Heard that.
Yeah, what the fuck?
What the fuck kind of stage play are you watching, dude?
One person stage play in a pod?
I mean, I guess you could do that, but that'd be like a black box production in the fucking alleyway. I don't know if that's...
An alleyway, damn. Spoken like a man with
Come
some
see my
experience.
one-person show in the gutter.
It's a night spot. All right. That's it for Rotten Tomatoes. Not much more to say. The critics and users so far have been pretty doting on this film. It's certified fresh, and even the audience has a pretty nice things to say about it, seems like. So
Tight.
Yep.
We got no real trivia for this movie. It's brand new, so we're going to be cruising right along. We're talking Cooter of the Week. Let's go hunting.
Straight chillin'. Cooter of the week.
that's never not funny to me.
That got you good, huh, Randy?
Yeah, that's a whole vibe.
Yeah, that is an amazing bump.
Juice, what is a Cooter and why are we hunting them?
A Cooter is a character type and a straight channel exclusive. Cooter must hit 3 of these 5 points to be considered a Cooter. We want the Cooter with the most points. The 5 points are sexual deviance, manipulation, smug arrogance, overall looking attire, and overall patheticness. Boys, there are no characters in this film. Is it possible to squeeze the Cooter out of here?
I think maybe the faceless guy. I think he's probably the Cooter, right? You know?
Big old hole through his face. That's pretty pathetic, right?
Yeah,
That's pretty pathetic.
it's tough. Like, I hate on Milo pretty hard, but also Milo is just a computer.
Yeah,
So,
Milo's nothing.
I wanted to mention that also. I didn't get a chance to react to that, but I don't have that feeling toward it. To me, it's just like,
yeah.
it's Siri. It's like, I don't feel anything for it because it doesn't feel anything. It's just doing what it's asked if it can.
Yeah.
Milo's a real son of a bitch.
I don't think so. How about the faceless cop is the only one I could like pull a point from. He definitely manipulation
Yeah.
because he's telling her false things like you were never married and, you know, we're gonna find you, even though he knows she's in fucking space. So manipulation exists.
Patheticness, because it sounds like he's really just a pawn of the government at that point.
Yeah.
That can be
exactly.
fair, because he's just taking like strict orders. You can hear, which is dude, that was a little
ridiculous
weak
thing.
sauce.
Yeah, I
I'm gonna
agree.
say they're whispering in the background. She's like, "Who's that talking?" Nobody, and then they just
Right
do
on
it
a pad
again?
of paper.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. The whole thing to me, it's like they explain that as, a guy the government can't let people know that this happened, so they're trying to scrub you from existence or whatever. Like, why can't they know? Like,
Well, and not can they know, but okay, they have the capability to scrub the entire internet, and not only scrub it, change images. No, your husband was not there, you were never married. But they don't have the ability to just cut the contact from this spaceship to Earth because they're like, oh, we're scared she's gonna expose us. It's like,
yeah,
what?
exactly. Like, they're
Why?
gonna expose the mission, but like, you are the government and you are capable of within a matter of like an hour or something, arrest real Liz and like take her to some deterrent camp or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like, I don't understand that whole thing. To me, I feel like that's a little bit patty. Seems a little bit like padding to me.
My boy 4chan would never allow this.
Wow. Old green hat himself. Why do they give a shit if she finds out that she was married or not? Like, why does that even matter? That specific piece
They don't
of
want her to.
information?
The thing they say is they don't want her to figure out who she is because then she can whistleblow them, I guess. But to what end?
Kind of a good point. Yeah. Why? So what if they're just like, yeah, your husband died of a disease, which he did. Here's his obituary or something. Like what? What would that change anything?
I don't know, man.
Anyway.
I think they're just trying to confuse her. Is what Real Liz said. They're just trying to confuse you.
The government's the real Cooter here.
I feel like the government is
States
confused.
government.
They hit manipulation and patheticness in their confusion. They manipulate themselves into confusion.
And they're arrogant as fuck, and they dress stupid.
Those suits are stupid.
Black suits. Who gives a shit, right?
What is
Fuck
Uncle
you.
Sam even wearing? That hat is insane.
You need a denim
This is the
jacket,
French government,
you
I
son of a
assume?
bitch.
Also, this is not the American government.
Lies.
Okay.
Oh, that's true. That's fair.
Making a lot of
It is totally French. There's just nobody in this movie.
Yeah.
I don't think it really hits.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just
Very
Cooter free
nature of
since
this movie.
2021.
yeah. Oh my, it's 2021, boys. Good lord.
Yes, it is. Welcome to the year.
You're
We're
almost
halfway
17
done.
years old.
I can't. Some of us were born in the 90s, man. The 1990s. Whoa.
Yeah, some of us were. Some of us. All right, no Cooter this week. It's time to let our hair down. We're getting into the social hour, and we're talking about what we've been watching this week.
Hey gang, what you been watching?
Randy, what you been watching?
It took a while to sort that out. Okay. Not a lot. I've mostly spent what free time I have playing new Pokemon Snap, which I greatly enjoy, and I've mentioned many times. It's a very zen game for me. Becky doesn't get it, I don't think, but it's like, to me, it's like, I don't know. I play it for the same reason you might play like a tower defense game, a flash game, or whatever. Like play like fucking Tetris. It's zen for me. I enjoy it. Other than that, the only things I've watched is we finally picked back up on our MCU chronological rewatch, or rewatch for me, watch for Becky. And we hit the original Avengers recently. So we did that this week, which is certainly one of my favorites in the bunch. That was the one that to me was like, oh, okay, so this is actually able to happen. This isn't just like studio bluster.
That was definitely the impressive, like, oh shit, wow.
This feels like a comic book. Like, this feels like fucking a comic book to me right now. So I enjoyed that rewatch. And the only other thing I watched was at Rob's recommendation, Mitchell's versus the Machines, which was fabulous in every way. And it's clearly, I don't know, I didn't look this up, I meant to, but I know that it's Lord and Miller that produced it, and they produced Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. I don't know if this is the same writer, but man, this movie has the same dad character essentially as Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and the same central conflict for the characters. But it's a very, very funny and quick-witted movie that's far more modern and tailored to modern sensibilities than Cloudy was. That was a little more like geared towards kids, I think. This certainly is geared towards families, but it's geared towards the whole family and not, it's a little bit less kid oriented, I think, than that movie was. I love that movie though too, and this kind of humor is just very much something I enjoy. I also love the fucking animation. They were doing like this Spider-Verse thing where they have the 2D animation sort of like integrated with the 3D animation as sort of like call outs or highlights of certain things and aspects. And the editing in this fucking movie is so good. It was great. It's a great fucking movie. So yeah, that's pretty much it for me. I love those movies, but that's all I've really watched this week.
Sweet deal. Glad you liked it, man. Juice, what you been watching?
Dude, I feel like I've been watching a shit ton lately. I watched Spiral. It was a newer movie that was out. We did that mini cast on it. I watched. I finished the Son of Sam's, I think it's called, a documentary that it's the newest docuseries from this month for Netflix. I liked it, and it is one that I haven't done it yet, but I do plan probably tomorrow to record a mini episode on that because I really did actually like it. That was cool. So it had a lot to do. It talks about Son of Sam. I had mentioned before, it talks about kind of like the historical effect it had, because it talks a lot about leading, because that was in the late 70s leading into the 80s. Like the just obsession with satanic cults and those, and then they also try to tie it into things like Charles Manson and stuff like that. It's really interesting, and talks a lot about just historical things and cultural things that are going on, which is how I like them to be kind of presented. So I found it very interesting. I like to learn the finer details of like the Son of Sam case, and they show like when they were shooting these interviews that happened then in the 90s when he found like Jesus, like he like found Christianity and was like totally, sorrowful of like what he did. And there was like this book written. He did like some, I don't know, 60 minutes interviews or something, Inside Edition. It was wild. I really liked, I thought it was good. I've been working through that new season of Castlevania. I've talked about this for years now. I think Castlevania is fantastic. It is a animated series that has been coming on Netflix for a few years now. It's on its fourth and final season. They really are trying to kind of like wrap some stuff up. I think I got about 3 episodes left to go. If you've never watched Castlevania, you should do it. Maybe wait until closer to spooky season, because it's great horror. It's got that kind of European Gothic kind of vibe to it, but it's awesome. Like, I really love that Castlevania series. It's something I also plan on doing a mini cast on. I've done it for all the other seasons of Castlevania. Definitely something you should check out, even if you're not a fan of the games. I never really played the games growing up, not like hardcore, and I really, really enjoyed it. It really is a great series. What else? I was watching some videos today with Bob. There is this Mortal Kombat that has come out called Mortal Kombat New Era. And it's not an official game. It's something that people pulled together. And essentially, it looks like it uses the sprites from maybe Mortal Kombat 2, or maybe even that like Mortal Kombat 3 that had like a shit ton of characters. Because like even their icons that they like when they scroll down the pillar or whatever, it uses those same pictures. But it has like a bajillion characters in it. I'm talking fucking, we watch Michael Myers, Leatherface, Shaggy from fucking Scooby-Doo, Homer Simpson.
Oh, he's a good fighter.
Earthworm Jim. I'm like a shit ton, and it looks fucking fun. It looks just like Mortal Kombat 2. And all these people have their own stories and their own fatalities. It looked pretty fucking fun. I'm going to try and download
the homebrew community, man.
Yeah.
They'll do some shit. They've done similar things with like Smash Bros and shit, where like any character that anybody has ever thought of will be included, and it's nuts what they do with these things.
It was impressive. So I myself am looking to check out Mortal Kombat New Era. The only other thing I made Bob watch, because we were talking about also watching Love, Death, and Robots Season 2, which is something I plan to move on as soon as I'm done with Castlevania. I made him watch one of my favorite ones from the first season, because he still has not worked through that. But we watched that one more time today. Other than that, one more thing. Randy talked about playing Pokemon Snap, and that's his in. I was playing Zelda for a while. I stepped back, and my just consistent game over the past several years where I really just want to turn my brain off is Overwatch. And luckily, it is the time of year where Overwatch is celebrating their like yearly anniversary, like when it dropped. And when they do that, they drop all the seasonal events at one time, because usually you can only do the seasonal events like during the season, like Christmas during Christmas, Halloween. Dude, I've been playing the fucking Halloween shit on Overwatch. All the skins, like a Bride of Frankenstein skin, like a Sleepy Hollow skin. It's got like a special play mode where everything's Halloween and they do it in a spooky voice, and I'm like, fuck. Like, I just oh my gosh, it's too soon, but it's coming. Like, I'm like, it's close, but I love it so much because the aesthetic is, I just like it, like seeps into my soul, and I'm just like, like I want to
5 months.
I want to reach out, like touch it. I'm like, oh, it's like there. It's in my screen. It's man, that game does great seasonal stuff, and like the Halloween is one of my favorites. Of course, Christmas is great too, but I've really been enjoying doing that shit. That's all I've been watching and doing. Bob, what you been watching, guy?
Reaching out and touching faith. That's what I've been doing. I watched Willy's Wonderland, which was a new Nick Cage joint that came out this year. It's basically a riff on Five Nights at Freddy's, where Nick Cage, he's got a lot of car trouble, and he doesn't have the cash to fix his car up. So there's this guy that owns basically a Chuck E. Cheese joint, and he hires Nick Cage. He's like, hey, if you come in here and you basically just clean up the whole restaurant overnight, make it look nice and tidy, I'll pay to have your car fixed up so you can get out of town. So he agrees to that. He's cleaning up the shop overnight, and when he's in there, the animatronic band that's on stage, they start coming to life one by one and trying to murder Nick Cage.
Can I ask you, do you know, I don't know if you know who Showtime Pizza, do you know, is that familiar to you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, I guess I don't know. There's a movie called The Hug, or a short film or whatever.
Yeah,
that's basically the same premise, and these things are basically like Chuck E. Cheese in the Midwest from like the 80s or whatever, a Showtime Pizza, and they use those animatronics in the movie The Hug, and I was wondering if it was something similar where they were doing that here, but I don't know. I guess you can't answer that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There's at least pretty much all these look like people in costumes. Like, I don't think they're actual animatronics in any way. It's definitely a low budget movie. They got Nick Cage, and he doesn't have a speaking role at all. Like, he just grunts kind of throughout the movie.
What?
Yeah, he doesn't say a single word. He just gives looks, stern looks.
What?
He's chugging soda throughout the entirety of it, and it's just very odd. It's
Why would you? Yeah. Why would you hire Nick Cage and not let him speak?
That's a great question.
Because I was asking, does anybody else speak in the film? And he was like, yeah, everybody else speaks fine.
Yeah, everybody else talks, but Nick Cage in this movie.
Poor choice.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I mean, I know it's a ripoff of Five Nights at Freddy's.
I wonder if they were able to offer him less money for not speaking.
I don't know, man. It's still like, it's a fun enough romp.
I don't think so.
It's not a game changer, but like if you can come across it easily, I'd say throw it on. It's a decent little ride, but it's nothing super great. I also watched a movie. It's a documentary. It's called DOA, Dead on Arrival, A Rite of Passage. It's a documentary about punk rock in the late 70s, early 80s. It sort of largely follows the Sex Pistols in England, as well as like a shitload of other punk bands in England that I'd never really heard of. And then it sort of like laser focuses on the Sex Pistols when they come over to America. They do a tour. I think it was in 1978. They do a short American tour. It's like 7 or 8 cities, something like that. And there's just like a documentary film crew with them, and they film them in all these cities, and they interview a lot of the fans and like why they're into punk, like what punk means to them, why they dress the way they do, how society perceives them, and all that. It's pretty damn interesting. And at a certain point in the movie, like they try and do an interview with Sid Vicious and Nancy Spungen, and this is like a few months before they die, and they're just like high off their asses and like falling asleep during the interview, and like really just can't even muster up a response to the questions. And it's like really, really difficult to watch. But also it's very interesting to see, man, because I feel like that time in music is just like very, very specific, and like we'll never get anything like that ever again, you know?
Yeah, that's true. Man,
so yeah, it's
sad.
It's got some downer points for sure, but it's
sad, but it's also nice to see the reality, because a lot of what you're sold in any kind of era of music is the greatness and the
punk rockers. They did whatever they wanted to do, and they made a shitload of money while they were at it.
Yeah,
good
and
for
they
them.
changed the scene, and they did this stuff. It's like, yeah, that's all true, but also they're people, and drugs fuck you. And like,
oh yeah,
it's a super interesting movie. I definitely recommend checking it out. MVD Rewind put it out on Blu-ray if you're interested. And this was a High Times documentary, like the marijuana magazine company.
They do some stuff like that, I guess.
I didn't realize that at all. But I
think
it's one of
they might have been the ones, and this makes more sense, but I watched a documentary. God, what was that? It was about tripping on LSD and shit, basically, like what it's like to do that. And I don't know, I can't remember what it was called now, but I feel like maybe they had a hand in that as well. But at least that's like in the realm of what they do. It seems like High Times has gone basically in the vein of like how Playboy has like articles about politics and shit, and I think that they've branched out, I guess, a lot. I've never read any of their magazines though, so maybe I'm just not keyed into what they do broadly. It's interesting though.
I recommend checking that out if you have any interest in 70s 80s punk rock. Check it out.
You should watch a band called Death next.
I would like to watch that, actually.
Shit's good.
Have not seen it. Last but not least, I wanted to give a shout outs to Sunray Cinema. They did a double feature of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 and 2 on 35mm last night. Check that out. It felt good to be back in theater. Never seen Texas Chainsaw on 35mm before. It definitely adds like an extra layer of like filth and grit to the movie. And it feels like the proper way to watch that movie, because it's like so unpleasant. Like that movie is just unpleasant to watch, and it feels even more so when presented in 35mm. It's an old ass print too. Like the film was like marred in several places. Like you could see like the scratches and cuts in the film, and like anytime there was a kill sequence that was about to happen, you'd see the tone of the film would switch. It would become like more magenta almost, and then as soon as the kill sequence finished, it would go back to normal, as if all the gore was removed from the film and then spliced back into the film. I don't know, interesting to see shit like that. And it was like there's like a card, like a title before the title card. Actually, there was like a little disclaimer. It was like, the London Film Commission has rated this X. It's just like
they had a video nasty. Like
exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. Some shouts outs to Sunray for continuously showing some badass stuff at their theater. That's all I've been watching this week. We got one more segment to get into. It's our Hotline Scream.
Hotline Scream.
If you are listening and would like to call in and leave a voicemail to be featured on next week's show, hit us up at 904-638-3231. We got a handful of voicemails and an email to get to this week. I think some people were calling in about reoccurring nightmares. That was a prompt that we posed over the past couple weeks. We'll get into some of that. I think first up, we're going to hear from Brandon. Let's hear what he has to say.
Hey gang, it's Brandon. Calling it. I'm not high this time, so it's not going to be a string of thought. But I did get a good laugh out of listening to that. I don't remember most of what I said from that night, so there we go. First off, Mitchell's vs. Machines is a fantastic animated movie. Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs, that was a great comparison to animation style. But on top of that, it's almost like that mixed with Into the Spider-Verse, which I love that movie. So this was just a big hit for me. I loved it. watched it last weekend. I'm probably going to watch it again this weekend. So anyone that's listening, anyone that hasn't seen it, highly recommend. The confusion with Tom's voicemail, I think he was just talking about how he likes cabin living, except when there's bears around. Not that there's a bear scene in the movie Evil Dead. So I think you guys just got a little fun up on that. But I just thought that. Anyways, I actually wanted to call in just for a shout out to the Slack channel. You know, I was having a bit of a rough couple days, and I sort of brought it up to the Slack channel, and it was just amazing how many people were like, "Dude, you got it! Like, you're good, and you got this," and sort of just helped me. I don't know, not like get through it, but just sort of like, I don't know, gave me some motivation to start trying to change how I'm eating and working out and whatnot. So I just thought that was super cool, and I really just wanted to say, like, thank you so much to you guys for having this space where we can all come and talk, and just to the Slack channel for being there for me when I needed it. I thought that was really cool, and I really appreciate it. So, not to end on a sappy note, but there we go. All right, boys, have a good week. Can't wait to hear the cast next week. Dippity scoopity, my boys.
All right.
Well,
Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah. I hope you guys are taking notes out there. We are changing lives and solving problems.
I will say, yeah, it kind of bumped off this past week where it was like a health sub tab
health
or whatever.
And fitness channel on our
So
Slack
we're all
group.
like really trying to rally and be like, this is what I ate, this is how I worked out today, this is what I did. It's helpful. It is helpful.
I'll tell you what's helpful is the new straight chilling line of supplements, non-FDA approved, of course.
Of course. It's not cocaine.
It's about 50% caffeine, 10% LSD, and about 40% sawdust. That's what we got.
And a dash of ayahuasca.
And some semen. Protein.
But that's
To
for our own
hold it all
private
together,
joy.
really.
That's for private reasons, of course.
Of course.
I'll be stroking.
True that. Yeah, thanks for calling, Brandon. Thanks for setting us straight on the bear bullshit. Apparently, there is a scene in Evil Dead where Ash is like, "Oh, that's a fucking bear." That's what Thomas was referencing.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks for joining in on our health and fitness channel over on Slack. Lots of positive feedback from everybody, and as always, our Slack channel is fucking killer. If you guys want to join,
69 participants this week.
that's right. If you want to join, you can't anymore because we're capped at 69 people. So too late.
69 dudes.
Only.
But no, if you do want to
Only
join,
dudes.
if you do want to join, hit us up on one of
No,
our social
69
media outlets.
only.
Okay, the joke is more important than having people join.
Only.
Thanks for calling, Brandon. Next up, we're gonna hear from Erin. Let's hear what she has to say.
Hi, this is Erin. As for nightmares, whenever, and this is topical to right now, whenever Roe versus Wade's in the news or like abortion access, reproductive health care is up for debate, I will consistently have nightmares about being pregnant and a doctor telling me, yeah, you gotta have the baby, which follows with me jolting awake in a cold sweat. I don't hate kids or anything, like I love them, but I really don't want one ever. So, yeah, donate to Planned Parenthood so I can stop having nightmares. Also, I used to live in Jacksonville, and I literally cry whenever you guys talk about Sunray because I miss that place so much. There's nothing like it anywhere in the world. So, yeah, thanks. Love what you guys do. Have a good one.
Aaron, I'm afraid that nightmare is going to just keep recurring.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
that is like, that's interesting to hear because it's never something obviously like I would experience, but that's terrifying.
Yeah, That really is.
You have to do this terrifying medical thing that'll change your body and life.
And
forever.
life.
Good Lord.
Yeah, you have to do that.
What a real terrible.
I remember having a friend, a mutual friend that we all had know, tell me about a nightmare he had where he woke up still believing that he had knocked up his girlfriend, and this was in high school. And it's like that's the kind of nightmare level that I guess we're getting into, where it's like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? What is gonna happen?
Not my dream.
Rob, did you have one of those? I didn't know that about
It's just fucking Bob.
Oh, okay. No.
He's just fucking Bob.
I'm
That's
just
all.
razzing you, Bob.
It's like,
Yeah. Thanks for calling, Aaron.
I feel that. Whoa.
Sorry for bringing up Sunray again and making you weep bitterly.
We're always there every weekend having a great time.
It's the best. They make twonkies and they're delicious.
your goddamn Hawaiian shirts and your sunrays and your whatnots.
Florida lifestyle.
Florida living.
Well, you're fucking wearing them.
It's true.
That's true.
that is not baseless.
That's going to be relevant soon.
Yeah, it will be.
Very relevant. Very.
Are you Proud Boys now? What's going on?
No. God, no.
Okay.
Jesus.
Okay.
We're not including you, Randy.
That's if you're going to be Proud Boys, then count me out.
Randy knows what's up. Next up, we're going to hear from someone who did not disclose who they are. So we'll hear from them now.
And there we go.
Suppose this is how you call in. I'm not sure. At no point did it say. But if this is the right number, nice job, guys. The show kicks ass.
Well, obviously that was intended for someone else, so
Right.
Thanks for calling.
Sorry, bud, you called the wrong number.
Yeah, clearly intended for someone other than this group.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, thanks for calling, mystery person, mystery Mang.
That was quite sensual, though, I must say.
Yeah.
Feels like you were right in my ear thanking me.
Deep inside Randy's ear hole. Just
Damn.
plowing him with compliments.
Yeah, thanks.
It's my boy Dick.
It's Randy's boy dick.
What's next? Wow, okay, we're not going to get there, are we?
Next, we got Justin's going to read an email. We got an email.
Are you
Justin's
okay?
got to work through some shit.
Do I need to do this for you?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Name, Tyler L. Comments. Hey guys, first time writing in, and I was writing about reoccurring dreams that I've had. The only one I get frequently is I'm in my house and I see someone I love get stabbed by a masked person, and then they look up the stairs at me. I always run out of the house, but I'm in super slow motion. And once I only got to the end of the driveway before I woke up, and most recently got a block or two away before I woke up, drenched in sweat. Anyways, that's all I got for the recurring dreams. Keep up the great job on the podcast, and pray I don't snatch a pick the flick when it reopens, so I can make you boys watch the greatest movie ever, Anaconda, The Hunt for the Blood Orchid. Good Lord. I've never even heard of that movie.
I really want to watch that now. That sounds
That
wild.
would be a reward for Bob, so joke's on you.
Well, yeah, that seems like the quicksand dreams or whatever. I feel like, I've definitely had that. How about you guys? Where it's like you're trying to run away from stuff and you can't.
No, I never really had anything like that either. I have the falling dream. That's a thing.
Yeah, I have that, like I said, the steep bridge dream a lot. That's like the biggest like fear. I have had ones where people I know have been murdered or hurt in some major way, and I can't really do anything about it, but not really the slow motion one.
I dream that I trip a lot and I'll like jolt awake.
Oh, huh. Yeah, I'll do that like right before I'm falling asleep.
Yeah.
Like when you're still awake.
I think
for
that's a
some
pretty common
reason,
thing.
it always ties into something like being on a skateboard or something, and like tripping, like where
You are a skater boy.
I guess
She did say see her later, boy.
Yeah, I guess that's what she said.
One day you'll get that hidden tape, buddy. Don't you worry.
That hidden tape. Wow.
Whoa.
Justin doesn't get that reference because he's too young.
I'm way too young for that reference.
Yeah, your laughter was just nervous laughter, of course.
Justin still has that boy dick. He doesn't get to.
Yeah, I can't believe you guys. I mean, I feel like that's pretty common too to have like a dream where it's like. I think it's pretty common to have like a dream where it's not even necessarily somebody getting hurt or whatever, like, but you're running from something and it's like, why am I not moving faster? Yes. Cool. I'm glad I contributed.
You did. No, I really haven't, like, not memorably had that dream.
True. Thanks for writing in. Again, if you guys are listening and would like to call and leave us a voicemail for next week, hit us up at 904-638-3231. We had a shitload of voicemails this week, so if you didn't hear yours, we're holding it for next week. Don't sweat it. Yeah, that's going to do it for us this week here at Straight Chilling. We'll be back next week with a brand new show, just like we always are. We're going to be hitting up the theater for a new release. It's A Quiet Place Part 2.
Even quieter.
So fucking quiet. It's a silent place.
It better be a silent film. I'll tell you that right now.
A shushy, quiet place.
He shushed me.
The Library is what it's called. That's what we're reviewing next week.
It's called
take
A Quiet Place.
Google. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
And shushing.
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor and watch that clip.
That's some good shit.
That's good shit. Slam your eyeballs into A Quiet Place Part 2. Get ready for next week's show. Until then, you can rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter at STR8_chilling. On Instagram at Straight Chilling Podcast. You can send us an email through our website, straightchillingpodcast.com. If you want to join in on our daily Slack channel conversations, hit us up in one of our social media outlets, and I'll send you a link to join in on the daily conversations. Don't forget about our Joe Bob watch parties every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And until next week, as always, all you mother truckers, please keep chilling.